Think online scammers wear hoodies? Wrong. Today's financial disasters wear silk suits, rent Rolexes, and preach millionaire mindsets. Last week, a self-proclaimed crypto guru walked into my office with 3 million followers, confident his delusions could bypass American contract law. He was wrong. I do not trade in likes. I trade in repossessions. When I dragged his Porsche 911 from his live-streamed yacht party, I erased his entire fake empire with one signature. Listen closely. Hello, everyone. Before today's story begins, we'd like to share a quick message. YouTube recently removed our monetization, cutting off our income. If you enjoy this story, we humbly ask for just $1 to help pay our staff so they can make a living and keep creating for you. Thank you for saving us now. Let's begin the story. My name is Piper Lopez. I am 32 years old, and I hold the title of Director of Debt Recovery and Risk Management at Aegis Capital and Recovery. If you live in Miami, you know the type of wealth that washes up on our shores. It is a city built on neon lights, sunburns, and an endless stream of credit. Aegis does not deal with your average car loans or mortgage refinancing. We cater exclusively to the ultra-rich and, more profitably, to the desperate individuals who want to pretend they belong to the ultra-rich. We hand out high-risk loans wrapped in velvet ropes, and when the illusion shatters, I am the one who shatters it completely. I am the apex predator in an ecosystem of plastic surgeons, luxury lease brokers, and offshore shell companies. My sanctuary of cynical pragmatism was interrupted on a Tuesday afternoon. The heavy oak door of my office swung open, and in walked my younger brother, Matteo. He is 22 years old, cursed with a painfully naive heart and a desperate desire to make something of himself in an era where everyone wants to be famous before they are actually competent. But Matteo did not come alone. Trailing behind him, or rather, absorbing all the oxygen in the room while Matteo carried his heavy lighting equipment, was a man who introduced himself as Jackson Thorne. Jax, for short. Jax was exactly the kind of walking cliché that kept Aegis Capital in business. He swaggered into my meticulously chilled office wearing a silk shirt unbuttoned halfway down his chest, exposing a tangle of gold chains that clinked with every exaggerated step. A massive, painfully obvious fake diamond ring caught the harsh fluorescent light above my desk. Before he even offered a proper greeting, his phone was out. The camera lens shoved obnoxiously into the space between us. He was live streaming, or recording, or whatever it is that these digital parasites do to feed their starving egos. "Piper, this is my mentor, Jax," Matteo said, his voice trembling with a mixture of exhaustion and misplaced awe. My brother was currently working as an unpaid camera assistant for this clown, lured in by empty promises of receiving equity in what Jax kept loudly calling his media empire. Jax flashed teeth that were bleached so aggressively they looked radioactive. "Piper, the legend herself. Listen, we are talking about free cash flow today. We are talking about aligning with universal frequencies and maximizing brand leverage. Your brother here is learning from the absolute best. We are on a rocket ship to the moon." I leaned back in my leather chair, letting the silence stretch until it became suffocating. "Put the phone away, Jackson," I said, my voice flat and devoid of any warmth. "Or I will have security confiscate it. What do you want?" He lowered the phone, an arrogant smirk playing on his lips. He wanted a car, not just any car. He demanded to lease our prized possession, a smoke-gray Porsche 911 GT3 RS. It was a masterpiece of German engineering, aggressive and sleek. Sitting down in our secure underground lot, Jax claimed he needed it as a prop for a massive giveaway project to show gratitude to his loyal fans. In reality, it was glaringly obvious he just needed a shiny background object to scam more vulnerable kids into buying his worthless online courses. He leaned across my desk, invading my personal space. That was his first mistake. A suffocating cloud of cheap, overpoweringly sweet cologne washed over me. It was the scent of desperation trying to mask financial failure. As he bragged about his projected quarterly earnings, his phone buzzed on the glass table. He glanced down, and for a fraction of a second, the arrogant mask slipped. I caught the unmistakable red banner of an insufficient funds notification from a commercial bank. His hands visibly twitched. Then, I looked at his wrist. He was wearing a Rolex Submariner. It was a beautiful piece, but my eyes caught a deep, distinct scratch on the ceramic bezel near the 4 o'clock mark. I knew that exact scratch. It belonged to a luxury rental agency 3 blocks down the street. They rented out high-end watches by the hour. The stench of bad debt was so thick in the room I could practically taste it. Every instinct I had developed over my career screamed at me to call security and throw this fraudulent opportunist out onto the blistering Miami pavement. But then, my gaze shifted to Mateo. My little brother was watching Jax with eyes full of absolute admiration. If I simply rejected Jax, Mateo would see his idol as a victim of the corporate machine. He would double down on his loyalty to this fraud. If I wanted to save my brother from this toxic entanglement, I could not just attack the scammer. I had to let the scammer destroy himself in broad daylight. I looked back at Jax, a cold, calculating smile slowly forming on my face. "All right, Jax," I said, folding my hands on the desk. "You want the Porsche? I think we can arrange a special credit contract just for you, something tailored exactly to your unique business model." I was not just handing him the keys to a supercar, I was handing him the shovel he would use to dig his own grave. I guided him down the long, soundproof glass corridor to closing room 4. I keep the thermostat in there locked at a bone-chilling 62 degrees. It is freezing by deliberate design. When people are physically uncomfortable, they want to leave. When they want to leave, they rush the process and sign faster. I gestured for him to take the leather seat across the polished black marble table. It is a subtle psychological weapon we utilize daily at Aegis. The client's chair is sawed down exactly 2 inches lower than mine. It forces them to physically crane their necks and look up to me, establishing an invisible, crushing hierarchy before a single syllable is exchanged. Jax dropped his heavily branded designer backpack on the floor and leaned back, trying desperately to project dominance despite shivering visibly in his thin, unbuttoned silk shirt. "Let us skip the boring boomer paperwork, Lopez," he announced, clapping his hands together loudly. "I will pay the first 6 months up front. I am transferring the equivalent in coin right now. Just give me the wallet address and we can wrap this up." I stared at him, my expression perfectly blank, refusing to mirror his chaotic energy. Aegis Capital does not accept imaginary internet money. Jackson, we deal exclusively in United States dollars, fiat currency, a direct wire transfer of $32,400 for the first month, and the mandatory security deposit is required right this exact second, or the car stays locked in the subterranean vault. The smug, practiced smile vanished from his face instantly. His jaw tightened as reality crashed into his digital delusion. Cash who uses fiat anymore? Fine. Hold on. My bank needs verbal authorization to bypass daily transfer limits. He stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over his lowered chair, and practically sprinted to the private restroom attached to the suite. Through the thick mahogany door, I could hear the muffled, frantic pacing. The acoustics of the bathroom amplified the desperate, hushed tones of a man begging his associates for emergency bridge loans. He was bargaining, promising absurd returns, pleading for liquidity. He emerged 20 minutes later. He looked slightly pale, and fine beads of sweat were breaking through his carefully applied facial foundation. But he marched back to the table, holding up his phone to show a bank confirmation screen. The wire had finally gone through. I opened the leather-bound folio and slid it across the marble table. Inside was a 50-page document, dense with impenetrable, microscopic legalese. While he had been sweating and begging in the bathroom, I had taken the liberty of making some highly specialized modifications. Deep within Section 12, I embedded the Asset Reputation Protection Clause. It explicitly stated that any use of the vehicle in connection with deceptive commercial practices, unverified promotional giveaways, or social media fraud would constitute an immediate, non-curable default. Further down, hidden entirely within the labyrinth of Section 24, was the digital asset lock clause. This was the true poison pill. It legally bound not just his personal credit, but every single cryptocurrency wallet, merchant processing account, and intellectual property asset registered under his limited liability company as cross-collateral. Matteo, standing awkwardly in the corner holding a heavy stabilizing gimbal, leaned forward. "Jax, maybe you should read the fine print," my brother whispered nervously, glancing between the massive stack of paper and his boss. "Just to be completely safe." Jax scoffed loudly, not even bothering to glance at the pages. He had already whipped out his smartphone again, aggressively hitting the record button. "Bro, we do not read fine print. We make moves. Winners execute, while losers sit around and calculate." He grabbed the heavy brass pen I offered and began slashing his signature across the bottom of every page, his eyes entirely focused on the front-facing camera of his phone. "Securing the 911 GT3 RS today. Chat straight. Cash transaction. We are leveling up the matrix right now." He did not read a single word. He just legally, bindingly handed me the detonator to his entire financial existence. Once the final signature was permanently inked, I collected the paperwork and smoothly slid a sleek, heavy black key fob across the freezing marble. He reached for it eagerly, but I moved faster. I placed my hand flat over his fingers, pinning them firmly to the table. He stopped, finally looking away from his glowing screen and up into my eyes. "Listen to me very carefully. Jackson," I said. My voice was barely above a whisper, yet it carried the absolute weight of a death sentence. "This vehicle is equipped with military-grade telematics and a remote engine immobilizer. If you scratch a single microscopic layer of the factory paint, or if you miss one single payment rhythm by even 1 minute, I will not call you. I will not send a polite reminder email. I will not negotiate terms. I will directly and permanently erase you." He jerked his hand back, swallowing hard. He tried to mask a sudden flash of genuine, primal fear with a forced, obnoxious laugh. "You are intense, Lopez. I like that energy. See you at the top." He grabbed the key and hurried out the door, yelling at Matteo to follow him and keep the camera rolling. I remained in the freezing, silent room, listening to their hurried footsteps fade down the glass corridor. 12 minutes later, a deafening, metallic roar echoed up through the floorboards from the underground vault. The flat-six engine of the Porsche screamed as it tore out onto the blazing Miami streets. I walked calmly back to my personal office, sat down at my desk, and booted up my secondary surveillance monitor. A highly detailed satellite map of the city materialized on the screen. A single, pulsing red dot appeared, moving rapidly eastward toward South Beach. The trap was perfectly set. The bait had been swallowed whole. The ultimate game of modern financial capitalism had officially begun. Over the next 3 weeks, my secondary monitor became a digital window into Jackson Thorne's chaotic existence. The telematics system embedded deep within the chassis of the Porsche was not merely a global positioning tracker. It was a constant, unforgiving stream of behavioral data. Every morning, I would log in and watch the telemetry graph spike into the red zone. The engine computer logged repeated cold starts followed immediately by aggressive acceleration, pushing the flat-six engine past 8,000 revolutions per minute before the oil had even warmed up. The braking sensors screamed of violent, last-second stops. Worse still were the geofence breach alerts. The red dot on my map frequently vanished into the abandoned warehouse districts of Hialeah at 2 o'clock in the morning, locations notoriously known for illegal underground street racing. He was treating a $250,000 masterpiece like a disposable toy. But the physical data from the car was nothing compared to the digital poison he voluntarily broadcasted to the world. I tasked an entry-level analyst with monitoring his social media output 24 hours a day. Through those high-definition videos, I watched the systematic humiliation of my brother. Jax no longer treated Matteo as a camera assistant. He treated him as an indentured servant. In one particularly enraging post, a sudden Miami squall had opened up. Instead of seeking shelter, Jax forced Mateo to stand outside in the torrential downpour, holding a massive golf umbrella over the gleaming hood of the Porsche to prevent water spots, while Jax sat comfortably inside the dry cabin recording a motivational video about enduring the storm. Mateo was completely drenched, shivering, while his so-called mentor preached about the hustle. My disgust crystallized into pure, calculated intent when Jax finally launched his master plan. It was not a giveaway. It was a blatantly illegal, unregulated lottery. He uploaded a heavily edited promotional video announcing a global raffle. For the price of just $50 a ticket, his followers could buy a chance to win the exact gray Porsche he was currently driving. He called it the ultimate wealth transfer event. Thousands of desperate teenagers and gullible adults began flooding his payment portals with their savings. He was actively selling lottery tickets for a secured corporate asset that he did not even legally own, all while his second monthly lease payment was rapidly approaching its deadline. Then came the desperate plea for sympathy. A notification popped up on my screen signaling an emergency live broadcast. Jax was standing on a dark street corner, practically hyperventilating, fake tears streaming down his face. The camera panned to the rear of the Porsche. The left taillight assembly was smashed to pieces, red plastic glittering on the asphalt. He wailed to his audience about how jealous haters and toxic individuals were trying to sabotage his rise to the top. He immediately pinned a donation link to the chat, begging his loyal community to help him cover the massive repair costs. He thought he was a genius. He had completely forgotten about the proprietary Aegis surveillance suite. I bypassed the public feed and accessed the vehicle's integrated security cameras. The high-definition footage from the rear license plate lens told a very different story. Exactly 12 minutes before he went live, the camera recorded Jax calmly handing a stack of $20 bills to two local teenagers. He then personally handed one of them a wooden baseball bat and pointed directly at the taillight. It was entirely staged, a pathetic, transparent play to manipulate his audience into paying for his lifestyle. The final nail in his coffin arrived at the end of month 2. The payment grace period expired. No funds cleared our accounts. Protocol dictated a standard 30-day late notice, so I drafted a brief, formal email reminding his company of their financial obligations. Less than an hour later, I received a link from my analyst. Jax was broadcasting again. He had printed out my email and was waving it in front of the camera, his face twisted in a sneer. "Look at this garbage, chat," he laughed, tearing the paper in half. "These corporate dinosaurs are panicking. Some jealous old office hag named Piper is blowing up my inbox because she cannot handle seeing a young king making moves. We operate on a higher frequency than these wage slaves. Tell Aegis Capital they can wait for my massive crypto pump to clear." I did not feel a single ounce of anger. Instead, a genuine, terrifying smile spread across my face. He had just handed me the keys to his execution. I opened a new encrypted file on my desktop. I compiled the telematics reports proving gross negligence. I downloaded the hidden camera footage proving deliberate property destruction and insurance fraud. I logged the illegal $50 raffle transactions constituting interstate wire fraud. And finally, I saved his little video committing corporate defamation. The trap had snapped shut. Now, it was time to reel in the carcass. The silence in my office on a Thursday morning was the kind that always precedes total devastation. The digital alert flashing on my screen signaled the beginning of the end. Jackson Thorne had just announced a massive multi-platform live stream scheduled for the upcoming weekend. The venue was a rented luxury yacht docked at the Miami harbor. The official purpose was to randomly draw and announce the winner of the Grand Porsche raffle. The actual purpose was glaringly obvious to anyone who understood the anatomy of a scam. It was his final, desperate cash grab, a final harvest of $50 tickets before he planned to disappear with the liquidity. Before I could bring the hammer down, I had to secure the collateral damage. I called Mateo back to the Aegis building. When he walked in, he looked exhausted, carrying the heavy bags under his eyes of someone working 24 hours a day for a ghost. I motioned for him to sit. I did not soften the blow. I turned my monitor around and played the unedited, high-definition security footage showing Jax paying teenagers to smash the taillight. Mateo watched, his face going completely pale. But that was just the appetizer. I opened a thick manila folder and pushed it across the desk. Inside were 5 different credit card statements. They were all maxed out, accumulating tens of thousands of dollars in high-interest debt, used to pay for Jax and his designer clothes, his VIP tables, and his leased Rolexes. All of the accounts were opened using Mateo and his social security number. I watched my little brother shatter. The realization that his mentor was nothing but a parasite draining his future brought him to tears, right there in the freezing room. However, the tears did not last long. The profound betrayal hardened into a cold, focused anger. I offered him a way out, but Mateo shook his head. He wanted to help. We formed a quiet pact. Mateo agreed to continue playing the role of the loyal, brainwashed cameraman. He would control the angles, direct the flow of the broadcast, and most importantly, keep Jax pinned to the exact physical coordinates I needed on the dock when the time came. Just as Mateo left, the master control system on my desk blared a flashing red critical alert. I accessed the live visual feed from the vehicle. I could not believe what I was seeing. Jax had driven the car into an aftermarket customization shop. He was actively having the pristine, factory smoke gray paint completely covered in a blinding, tacky, reflective chrome gold vinyl wrap. Altering the physical appearance of the asset without written authorization was an immediate, non-negotiable breach of contract. It was the final nail. I picked up my secure line and dialed Grizz. Grizz was our primary recovery specialist. He was a towering mountain of a man with a massive, untamed beard, a terrifyingly calm demeanor, and absolutely no patience for entitled influencers. "Grizz," I said into the receiver, "fire up the heavy-duty flatbed. We have a high-profile extraction at the marina this weekend." While Grizz prepared the heavy machinery, I executed the digital strike. I transmitted my fully compiled dossier of financial fraud, wire violations, and property destruction directly to a presiding judge at the Commercial Commerce Court. Within 3 hours, operating under the veil of corporate emergency protocols, I was granted a swift, unannounced lien. It was a silent digital net, thrown directly over every single bank account, merchant processor, and cryptocurrency wallet registered to Jackson Thorne and his limited liability company. The physical asset was ready to be towed. The digital assets were entirely frozen. The storm was fully loaded. The digital counter in the corner of the live broadcast screen ticked rapidly upwards, crossing the 200,000 viewer mark. It was a Saturday afternoon, and the Miami sun beat down mercilessly on the rented luxury yacht docked at the harbor. Electronic dance music pulsed from massive rental speakers, creating a heavy vibrating bass that you could feel in your chest. Standing on the wooden planks of the dock, positioned perfectly in front of the blindingly awful gold chrome Porsche, was Jackson Thorne. He was dressed in head-to-toe designer labels, sweating profusely under the sun and the heavy studio lights Mateo had set up. Jax was practically screaming into a gold-plated microphone, begging his audience to wire their final $50 payments before the supposed drawing closed in 10 minutes. He was entirely in his element, spinning a web of pure auditory garbage about generational wealth and exclusive mindsets. He had no idea his entire world was about to end. The deafening blast of a pneumatic air horn shattered the party atmosphere. The sheer volume of the blast cut through the electronic music like a physical blade. A massive, heavily modified industrial flatbed tow truck roared down the private access road of the marina. Grizz was behind the wheel, his massive, bearded face locked in a scowl. He did not slow down. He threw the heavy transmission into reverse and backed the colossal steel beast directly into the cordoned-off filming area, crushing velvet ropes and scattering Jax's hired entourage like frightened insects. The heavy hydraulic brakes hissed as the massive steel bed stopped mere inches from the gold Porsche. The passenger door of the truck swung open. I stepped down onto the wooden dock. I wore a perfectly tailored, crisp white suit and dark polarized sunglasses. Against the backdrop of his chaotic, neon-drenched circus, I was the cold, sterile arrival of reality. Jack spun around, his fake bleached smile instantly contorting into an expression of sheer terror. His eyes darted from the massive tow truck to me, and then to the glowing red recording light on Mateo's camera. The panic in his chest was visible. He lunged forward, desperately trying to throw his hands over the expensive camera lens. "Cut the feed!" Jack screamed, his voice cracking violently. "Cut the feed right now, everyone! This is just a prank. It is a prank by my jealous competitors trying to ruin the biggest giveaway in internet history. Do not listen to them." Mateo did not stop recording. He expertly sidestepped, keeping Jax perfectly centered in the frame. Seeing that the broadcast was still live to hundreds of thousands of people, Jax abandoned the camera and sprinted toward me. His hands were shaking uncontrollably. He reached into his designer pants and pulled out a thick, wrinkled wad of $100 bills, shoving them frantically toward my chest. "Take it, Lopez. Take the cash," he hissed under his breath, his eyes wide and pleading. "I have more. Just give me 48 hours. Do not do this on camera. I am begging you." I did not blink. I reached out and violently swatted his hand away. The wad of dirty cash exploded into the air, raining down onto the salty wooden planks of the dock. I reached to my belt and unclipped a high-powered law enforcement megaphone. I raised it to my mouth, ensuring my voice would overpower the dying beat of his background music. "Jackson Thorne," I announced, my amplified voice echoing across the entire marina and straight into Mateo's audio receivers. "Pursuant to the Commercial Lease Agreement 047-9, you are officially in default. You are 60 days delinquent on your financial obligations to Aegis Capital. Furthermore, you have engaged in unauthorized asset modification and illicit interstate wire fraud by selling raffle tickets for property you do not own." Mateo pushed the camera forward, zooming in tightly on my face, and then panning down to the legal repossession order in my left hand. Every single one of his 200,000 viewers heard every single word with crystal clarity. "No, she is lying," Jack shrieked, spinning around to face the lens, his chest heaving. "My lawyers will sue her into oblivion. I own this car. I own everything." I ignored his pathetic screaming. I gave Grizz a single, sharp nod. The giant man leapt from the cab of the truck, hauling massive, heavy-duty steel chains. He did not care about the delicate aesthetic of the vehicle. He dropped to his knees, sliding the thick metal hooks roughly under the front axle of the Porsche. The moment the hydraulic winch engaged, a terrifying metallic screech filled the air as the steel cable pulled taut, dragging the low-clearance supercar forcefully onto the steep incline of the flatbed ramp. The front bumper scraped against the steel. The cheap, unauthorized gold chrome decal caught on a sharp edge, with a sickening tearing sound. A massive sheet of the blinding gold vinyl ripped clean off the hood, exposing the dull factory smoke-gray paint underneath. It was the physical manifestation of his ruined facade. The gold was peeling away, leaving only the ugly, undeniable truth. Jax collapsed. His legs simply gave out. He dropped to his knees right there on the dock, watching his ultimate status symbol being dragged away like garbage. The confident, booming voice of the crypto guru was gone, replaced by the pathetic sobbing of a broken man. He buried his face in his hands, begging me, begging the universe, pleading for someone to stop the destruction of his brand. But the execution was not over. The final strike did not come from me. It came from the boy he had abused for months. Mateo smoothly rotated the heavy camera rig, flipping the high-definition lens away from the sobbing mess on the ground and directly onto his own face. He stared directly into the digital eyes of the massive audience. With his free hand, Mateo ripped the heavy plastic VIP staff lanyard from his neck. "This man is a complete fraud," Mateo said. His voice was steady, calm, and completely devoid of the fear he had carried for weeks. "He does not own the car. He does not own the watch. He opened credit cards in my name to pay for his VIP tables. There is no giveaway. There is no wealth transfer. It is all a lie to steal your money." Mateo wound his arm back and threw the heavy plastic lanyard as hard as he could. It struck Jack squarely in the side of the head with a sharp smack. "I quit," Matteo declared to the camera. He reached up, forcefully killed the live feed, and the screen went permanently black for 200,000 people. The silence that followed was the most beautiful sound I had ever heard. Even after the absolute humiliation on the docks, the delusion did not die immediately. That evening, hiding in his sparsely furnished apartment, Jax went live from his laptop camera. His face was blotchy, his designer silk shirt stained with sweat and harbor dirt. He was crying, but it was a vicious, weaponized crying. He pointed his trembling finger at the camera, inciting his remaining hardcore loyalists to launch a coordinated cyber attack on the Aegis Capital servers. "I am going to sue her into the ground," he spat, wiping his nose aggressively. "I still have the entire raffle treasury. Millions. I will hire the most vicious corporate lawyers in Florida and bleed Aegis dry. They cannot touch my community." He slammed his laptop shut and grabbed his secure tablet. The time for bravado was over. It was time to run. He initiated the emergency protocol to route all the accumulated raffle funds through a digital tumbler and into an anonymous, untraceable offshore crypto wallet. He typed in his master password, his hands shaking with a toxic mixture of adrenaline and pure panic. The screen loaded with a spinning circle. He blinked, rubbing his eyes violently, unable to comprehend the digits staring back at him on the high-resolution display. The balance displayed exactly $0.00. A soft chime echoed from his phone. It was an encrypted video file from an unknown secure number. He tapped it. My face appeared on his screen, sitting calmly in my freezing office, presenting a stark, terrifying contrast to his frantic desperation. "Good evening, Jackson," I said through the recording, my tone conversational, but incredibly lethal. "If you are watching this, you are probably trying to locate your liquidity. I strongly suggest you review Clause 18C of the Master Lease Agreement you signed without reading. It explicitly granted Aegis Capital the irrevocable right to access, freeze, and seize all commercial assets and digital wallets linked to your limited liability company. If the vehicle was utilized as an instrument for telecommunications fraud, your money is gone." But I did not keep it. Aegis Capital operates on ruthless pragmatism, but we do not consume the poison we extract. Early the next morning, I handed the complete digital ledger over to the Federal Financial Crimes Investigation Division. Utilizing advanced blockchain tracing and standard bank reversal protocols, we initiated a massive, automated refund process. Over the next 48 hours, thousands of teenagers and gullible followers woke up to a notification that their $50 ticket purchases had been securely returned to their accounts. The narrative shifted instantly. His victims finally realized the ugly truth. By Wednesday afternoon, every major social media platform had permanently banned his IP address and scrubbed his channels from existence under their severe anti-fraud guidelines. The empire was not just destroyed, it was completely unwritten from the internet. 4 months later, the blistering heat of Miami remained unchanged, but the players had shifted. I was driving my personal sedan through a less glamorous district near the airport, waiting at a painfully long red light. I glanced out my passenger window at a cheap, cracked asphalt parking lot. A valet attendant was shuffling across the pavement in an ill-fitting, faded blue uniform polo. He was carrying a bucket of dirty water and a cheap plastic squeegee. He turned his head, and our eyes met through my tinted glass. It was Jax. The heavy gold chains were gone. The fake rental Rolex was gone. The moment he recognized the sharp profile of my face, his shoulders slumped in utter crushing defeat. He quickly raised a greasy gray rag, desperately covering his face in a futile attempt to hide his shame as the light turned green and I drove away, never looking back. That evening, I sat in a quiet, warmly lit Italian restaurant. Across the table from me sat Matteo. He looked completely different. The ridiculous oversized streetwear was gone, replaced by a simple, well-ironed button-down shirt. His hair was cut short and neat. He smiled warmly, sliding a thick stack of paper across the white tablecloth. It was his midterm exam for an actual, accredited business administration course at the state university. A bright red letter A was circled in ink at the top. I actually read the textbook, Mateo laughed, cutting into his steak. Turns out, real wealth takes actual work. I smiled, raising my glass of red wine to clink against his. The illusion had been shattered, and something real and solid had grown in its place. The world is full of people selling shortcuts, promising the moon for just a small down payment. But gravity always wins. The law always has a price, and I am simply the one who collects it. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. We hope you enjoyed it. As an ad-free channel, your support is what keeps us alive. Please support Boss Revenge Stories with just $1 via the QR code on the screen, or click the link in the description box or pinned comment. Also, we'd love to connect with you. Please leave a comment telling us which city or state you're listening from. Thank you for standing with us, and see you in the next stories.